I pushed open the front door, the soft click of the lock echoing through the quiet house. The smell of chamomile tea hit me almost immediately, Daniel's signature evening ritual. I froze for a heartbeat, the bag in my hand halfway to the floor. Something felt off. Too still. Too quiet. Lily. My voice was steady, but inside, a storm was already forming. No reply. I hung up my coat, the silk of my blouse brushing against my arm, a comforting normality in contrast to the cold unease creeping through my chest. I walked slowly toward the basement door, every instinct screaming that this was not the routine scene I had come home to countless times. The air grew cooler as I descended, the faint scent of damp concrete mingling with the lingering aroma of tea. And then I saw her, my little girl, sprawled on the floor, pale and motionless, a soft thump of her head against the steps barely audible. And there he was, Daniel, sitting in the dim light with a cup in his hand, sipping calmly, like nothing was wrong. My breath caught. Panic surged and time slowed. My hands shook as I crouched beside Lily, checking for a pulse, every maternal instinct screaming at me to act. But my mind kept flicking back to him, that impossible calm. How could he sit there, drinking tea, while our daughter lay unconscious at his feet? 1,000 questions collided at once, and for the first time in years, the foundation of my life seemed to tremble beneath me. Years ago, I was a different woman, younger, uncertain, and far too eager to please everyone except myself. I remember sitting at that same kitchen table, the one Daniel now leaned against with that impossible calm, and trying to make sense of my own worth. My parents had always dismissed my ambitions, brushing off my ideas with a polite smile and a pat on the shoulder that stung more than a slap. "You're dreaming too big, Sam," my father had said, his voice final, unyielding. "You need to settle. Life isn't for chasing impossible things." I'd felt that familiar lump rise in my throat, my hands trembling as I gripped a worn notebook, a notebook my grandmother had given me the Christmas before. Inside, her neat handwriting had inscribed a single line: "Strength isn't loud, my dear. It's quiet, persistent, and unstoppable." I clutched it to my chest like a lifeline, hiding the tears that threatened to spill. Even then, I knew I had to make a choice. Stay small, conform, and live a life dictated by others? Or step out into the unknown, fueled only by my own courage? That night, I resolved to leave the expectations behind. I packed a small bag with essentials, whispered goodbye to the familiar voices that tried to tether me, and walked into a future I could barely imagine. I remembered the sting of rejection so clearly, the way my mother's eyes flickered with disappointment, the heavy sigh from my father, the echo of their words in the empty hallway. But somewhere beneath it all, a quiet fire had been lit. That fire carried me forward through years of uncertainty, of nights spent questioning if I had chosen correctly. And now, standing over Lily in our basement, that same fire roared back to life. Protecting her, shielding her, making sure she never felt that helplessness. It wasn't just instinct. It was the very thing my grandmother had whispered into me all those years ago. Strength wasn't loud. But right now, it had to be unmistakable. After leaving home, I stepped into a world that was vast, unpredictable, and sometimes cruel. I remember my first apartment, a tiny studio with peeling paint and a view of the alley behind a laundromat. Every night, I pored over my grandmother's advice, over and over, letting her words sink deep. Strength is quiet, persistent, unstoppable. I repeated it like a mantra as I took my first job at a small marketing firm where everyone assumed I was naive and unprepared. Long nights followed, my fingers raw from typing, my eyes burning from reviewing pitches, my heart heavy with self-doubt. Every small win felt monumental. Landing a client who had almost laughed me out of the room, making my first profitable sale, seeing a project I managed flourish. Slowly, the quiet fire that had been nurtured through rejection grew into something tangible: confidence, skill, independence. Along the way, I found mentors who saw past my youth and nerves. One of them, a sharp and respected woman named Claire Donovan, believed I could rise faster than I imagined. She pushed me to refine my ideas, to trust my instincts, and to fight for my space in a field dominated by voices louder than mine. I learned that competence demanded patience, that persistence was more powerful than ego, and that subtlety could sometimes carry more weight than confrontation. Yet, throughout it all, I kept my successes hidden from my family. Daniel, at the time, had been charming but controlling, always quick to dismiss my ambitions with polite skepticism. I learned to navigate two lives, one outwardly ordinary, the other quietly thriving, building financial independence and knowledge that would one day become my safety net. I didn't flaunt achievements on social media or boast about my independence. I posted modest updates, carefully curating an image that kept them unaware of just how capable I had become. Every dollar saved, every connection forged, every skill honed was part of a silent preparation, a safety plan not just for myself, but for the family I hoped to protect. Even the basement, which now seemed a place of dread, had once been a quiet corner of planning, of plotting a life that would never again leave me powerless. And now, standing there with Lily unconscious at my feet, all that quiet, painstaking preparation surged through me. The fire that had been nurtured through years of struggle flared into action, precision, and clarity. I knew I could no longer hesitate. Every lesson, every sacrifice, every hidden hour of growth had led to this moment. My strength, quiet for so long, had to roar now. "Daniel," I said, my voice low but firm. "What did you do?" He sipped his tea slowly, eyes calm, almost too calm. "I didn't do anything, Sam. She just passed out." My heart pounded, adrenaline surging. My hands trembled as I checked Lily again, pressing my fingers to her wrist. Weak pulse. She was alive, but barely. Fear clawed at me, but I forced myself to think. Panic would not help my daughter. "Explain," I said, sharper this time, moving closer. "Why is she in the basement alone? Why are you sitting there drinking tea?" Daniel's smile was thin, almost polite. "She wanted to explore. I was making tea. Nothing serious." I shook my head. Nothing serious? My mind raced, remembering years of subtle manipulations, times when his calm exterior had masked dismissive or even dangerous behavior. But this was different. My maternal instincts, honed through years of struggle and preparation, told me I could not wait. I needed to take control. I lifted Lily gently and carried her to the living room, laying her on the couch. My phone was already in my hand, dialing emergency services. Daniel followed, the cup of tea still balanced in his hand, like a bizarre symbol of detachment. While I monitored Lily's breathing, I noticed the details around me: the faint stain on the carpet, the overturned laundry basket in the basement doorway, the way the shadows fell across his face. Every detail mattered. My years of quiet observation, of preparing for this exact moment, sharpened my focus. When the paramedics arrived, I handed over Lily without hesitation, recounting the events clearly and calmly. Daniel's protests were weak, his story faltering under the clarity of my account and the evidence around us. I could see the disbelief flicker across the paramedic's face, his calm demeanor no longer convincing. Once Lily was stabilized, I turned to him fully, letting the weight of the moment press down. "You need to understand something, Daniel. I am not the same woman you married. I am not powerless. I am not naive, and I will not allow our daughter's life to be endangered because of your carelessness." He opened his mouth, and I held up my hand. "No words. Not now. The truth is obvious to everyone who has eyes to see it. And yes, I have kept parts of my life hidden from you. My independence, my skills, my ability to protect what matters most. Lily, none of it is up for negotiation." For the first time, I saw something crack in his composed exterior. Guilt, fear, and a dawning understanding that the woman in front of him was not to be underestimated. He could no longer hide behind polite smiles and teacups. He had underestimated the quiet fire, the years of preparation, and the unwavering resolve of a mother determined to protect her child. This was the turning point. The power had shifted, and I was ready to define the terms. The house felt different now, charged with a quiet authority that had nothing to do with furniture or walls.
It was in me.
Every decision I had made, every skill I had honed, every quiet plan for independence, it had all led to this moment. I could see it in Daniel's eyes, the recognition that his control had slipped, that the rules had changed. "Listen carefully," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "There are conditions. Not because I want to punish you, but because I will not allow this to happen again. Lily's safety comes first. My patience is over." He swallowed hard, eyes avoiding mine.
I
understand," he whispered. "You will attend parenting classes," I continued. "You will learn how to respond in emergencies, how to recognize when someone needs help, and how to put your child's needs above your own comfort. No excuses. No delays."
His jaw tightened.
I didn't falter. "You will stop minimizing risks, lying about incidents, or pretending danger doesn't exist. I will know everything. Transparency isn't optional, it's mandatory." I took a breath, letting the words settle. "And Daniel, if you cannot meet these conditions, you will not be alone with Lily. I will ensure her safety, regardless of the inconvenience to you." Then I addressed myself, quietly, reminding myself of the power I held. I had the right to enforce boundaries. I had the ability to protect my child. Compassion did not mean weakness. Finally, I spoke to my daughter, softly, as she rested in her room after the hospital visit. "You are safe now, Lily. Mommy is here. And I promise, nothing like this will ever catch you off guard again." The fire within me, once quiet and cautious, burned steadily, shaping the household's new balance. Daniel's calm composure had dissolved into a hesitant willingness, the first crack in a long-standing dynamic. I had turned the tables without rage, without drama, only clarity, firmness, and maternal resolve. I realized, too, that this wasn't only about punishment. Each condition was a chance for growth, for him to be better, for Lily to feel secure, and for me to trust again. Boundaries weren't walls. They were frameworks for safety, respect, and healing. By the end of that evening, the shift was undeniable. I was no longer reacting. I was leading, protecting, and shaping the environment around me. The quiet, persistent strength I had cultivated for years had become unmistakable. And Daniel, for the first time, understood who he was dealing with, a mother who would never compromise her child's well-being again. Days passed, and slowly Lily began to recover. Her cheeks regained color, her eyes sparkled with curiosity again, and the soft giggle I had almost forgotten returned. Every time I held her, I felt the weight of what had happened, but also the immense relief of seeing her safe. Daniel kept to the boundaries I had set, awkwardly attending classes, fumbling with his new responsibilities, but the change was undeniable. He was beginning to understand the gravity of his actions, though it would take time for trust to rebuild fully. I watched him from a distance, feeling neither triumph nor resentment, only cautious hope that he could grow into the father Lily needed. I, too, reflected on the journey that had brought me here. From the timid girl whose parents had dismissed her dreams, to the woman who had carved her independence quietly, every struggle, every hidden success had led to this moment of unshakable clarity. I realized that protection wasn't only about being ready for emergencies. It was about knowing my worth, trusting my instincts, and never letting fear dictate my actions. In my hand, I held the worn notebook my grandmother had given me, the one that had whispered courage into my heart years ago. Its pages were frayed, but the message remained powerful. Strength isn't loud. It's quiet, persistent, unstoppable. Today, I understood it fully. I had become that strength, quiet when necessary, unyielding when needed, unstoppable when my child's safety was at stake. Lily curled against me, sleepy and content, and I kissed the top of her head. The storm had passed, but the calm that followed felt earned, deliberate. I knew the house would never be the same, and neither would I, not because of anger or vengeance, but because I had grown into a woman who would never compromise what mattered most. And in the quiet of that evening, as the sun dipped low and cast warm shadows across the living room, I whispered to myself, a soft affirmation and a vow to the life I had fought for. I am enough. I am strong. And nothing will ever make me doubt it again. Bottom of form.